like annually similar to the wind comes every year. Hello and welcome. I'm Raimundo Rechaga with Xinhua News Agency from Havana, Cuba. We're at the site of the 27th edition of the Cuba International Book Fair in this east fortress of San Carlos de la Cabaña, located just east of the capital, Havana. Here we are located because this 27th edition of the International Book Fair of Cuba celebrated in this island's capital, and this year the topic of the main dedication of this fair is to China as nation guest of honor. In this city, which is almost 500 years old, this book fair, the most massive and important cultural event in Cuba, takes place. It started on February 1st and runs until February 11th. Lots of people are expected to come here during the next few days to buy books, to have good meetings with family members and have and share their experience here with books and with literature, and also know about China as nation guest of honor here in the book fair. This is the most important and massive cultural event that takes place in this island. It has taken place since 1982 when it started not here but in the capital itself. And then in 2000 it moved to this Spanish colonial era fortress. It was the main fortress and the biggest one done by the Spanish in the colonial era during in the 1700s. It was actually finished in 1774 when it was finally built. After many years, 11 years it took to build this fortress that it's 700 meters long and 240 meters wide. Here it's where the Cuba Book Fair takes place every year since 2000. And also every year it's dedicated to a nation as a guest of honor. It is the first time that China is invited to be a nation guest of honor in any Latin American book fair. So it's a major accomplishment and a major event for Chinese literature and for Chinese editorials, authors, writers to come here to Cuba and spread the word and spread their literature and spread Chinese culture and its diversity here for Cubans, and not only for Cubans but for thousands of people that come from 41 nations, as the organizing committee has said yesterday in the inauguration. 41 nations and over 400 authors artists and intellectuals are participating here in this Cuba Book Fair. As we are walking through the San Carlos de la Cabaña fortress, site of this Cuba International Book Fair, we are heading towards the Chinese Pavilion. This is where all the Chinese literature, contemporary and also traditional literature and other types of arts are displayed for the Cuban public to come and appreciate the wide diversity of China's culture here in the Cuba International Book Fair. We can see how this has been decorated with a sign that says China, People's Republic of China, nation guest of honor. And here is where it all starts for Cubans and foreigners that come here to the fair to watch and learn and buy books of Chinese literature, of Chinese authors, of different topics. We can see books on China's governance, on China's cultural diversity, on China's different cultural themes that are here for Cubans to learn and for Cubans to buy and take those books home so they can have more knowledge of the millenary civilization that China is and its culture and its diversity over the years. We can say that over 220 writers, authors, Chinese intellectuals, and officials from different Chinese publishing houses are present at the Cuban Book Fair, are present here in this Chinese pavilion. And right now I invite you to come in to the Chinese pavilion so we can take a look at how it's been displayed for Cubans here. It's also a good sign of bilateral collaboration and cooperation between Cuba and China, as this is a sign, again, of not only the good political and economic ties that Cuba and China have, but also now it's spreading to cultural, literature, and important literature ties. At this moment here you can see how Cubans are coming in to learn, to see, to appreciate some of the books that are being displayed here by Chinese editorials, publishing houses, and you can see how Cubans are taking a look at their books. We have different types of books here from different editorials, like the universities and different foreign language and research editorials, publishing houses, which have on different topics such as governance, development, China's development and reform, Chinese currency. Also, we have some books here for children. So we continue our tour of the Chinese Pavilion at the 27th edition of the Cuba International Book Fair 2018, and now we're joined by Tao Haiyun, Deputy Director General of the State Administration of Press, Publication, Radio, Film, and Television of China. Thanks for joining Xinhua News Agency live broadcast. Can you please tell us how this Chinese Pavilion, as China is the nation guest of honor at this Cuba International Book Fair, has been set up, has been organized, and in this first day, how have you seen Cubans react and see Chinese books here?
Okay, I'm very pleased to share my views on the exhibition because I think that it's the first time for our sector to organize the publishers to come far away to Cuba. But I feel that the publishers in China are very enthusiastic about this opportunity. So this time they bring about 3,000 titles of books from China. So I think they break into several categories. One category you can see from here, we call it the themed books, which is about the our leaders' book, their important works, like say the Governance of China by President Xi Jinping. And we have 2 volumes. The first volume already sold almost 6 million copies, and the second volume just released, and I think it's already sell about 10 million copies up to now. So it's very popular, especially I think that the countries like Cuba and the Latin American countries are very keen to understand China. So I think through these books, especially the academics, the scholars, they can gain a better understanding and insight into how this country, China, has developing so fast. And what is the mechanism, the secrets behind its success, socially, economically, politically. So I think that we put lots of emphasis on recommending the books by President Xi Jinping to the Cuban readers and audiences.
So as we've seen, mutual translation of books between Cuba and China that not only talk about China and its wide variety of topics, but also books about Fidel Castro, the Cuban leader, Che Guevara. Can you comment us on this mutual joint effort of translating books?
I think this program started about 5 years ago, and the departments of 2 governments think it's important to set up a program to translate important works and classics to their readers. So by statistics, China already imported the copyrights from Cuban publishers since the founding of the People's Republic of China. So almost 100 titles from Cuba has been translated and published. especially for the past 5 years, more efforts and resources have been put into this program. So lots of literature works by the famous Chinese writers have been translated and published in Cuba, like Liu Zhengyun, like Mai Jia. They are all here at this book fair this time. They feel very excited because many readers just come directly to them and calling their names and tell their feelings about reading their books. So they feel they are needed by the Cuban readers. It's very good for them.
Well, we thank Xiao Haoyun, Deputy Director General of the Department of Import Administration at the State Administration of Press, Publication, Radio, Film, and Television of China. We continue our live broadcast from the 2018 Cuba International Book Fair, as is dedicated to China as the nation guest of honor. And we can see now in this part of the pavilion, we can see how we have publications again from different Chinese publishing houses. Lots of them here, 60 exactly are here to present their books, to present their authors, to present their texts, which are really of great acceptance by the Cuban public. As you can see, we have lots of people here at the second part of the Chinese pavilion, and it's important to also tell the audience that in the inauguration, Miguel Diaz-Canel, the first Vice President of Cuba, said that with this book fair, cultural ties between China and Cuba, beyond the good and excellent political and economic links that there already exist between both countries, will have a new opportunity to expand, to deepen, and to strengthen with this book fair, because from now on, China will have a key participation and a continued participation at Cuba's International Book Fair, which again, we reiterate, it's the most important cultural event that takes place in this island, not only because it brings together lots of editorial publishing houses, authors, artists, and intellectuals from many countries of Latin America and the Caribbean and other parts of the world, but also it's the most massive event because the Cuban family as a whole comes here to enjoy books, to buy books, to celebrate the book fair, and it's a moment of the year that Cuban families are waiting for. As we continue our path through here in the Chinese pavilion, we can see to our left as we have Chinese books on its history, on China's history. Also, we have mutual translation. This is a work that Chinese publishing houses and Cuban publishing houses have done together. Mutual translation between Cuba and China on different topics. We have topics here of Chinese geography, education, science and technology, Chinese religions and its ethnics, environment in China, China's diplomacy and its social development. But also here we have part of the most classic books and texts on Cuba. We have here, for example, the Bolivian diary of mythical Argentinian and Cuban commander Ernesto Che Guevara, been translated into Chinese. It's the diary he left before he was captured in Bolivia and assassinated. We also have to the right the motorcycle diaries, which is a Latin American journey that Che Guevara did throughout Latin America to discover the inequalities that exist in the region. But also here to our, in this part of the pavilion, we have books of Fidel Castro, the mythical, the former president and commander of the Cuban Revolution. We have the book Fidel Castro Rus, a guerrilla of times, one of the last works being done to Fidel Castro before he died in November 2016, also translated into Chinese. So as we can see, it's not only about an exhibition of how Chinese literature, authors, texts, and its writers are here at the Chinese Pavilion, but we can see how this is the concrete cooperation between China and Cuba on literature, on culture. We continue as we head out. We have finished this quick tour of the Chinese pavilion. We head out, and you can see that here, just as we head outside, there's the way Cubans are lining up to buy books that are displayed inside the pavilion, and here's the selling point for Cubans to buy. You can see it's very crowded right now, and Cubans are taking a look at the Chinese texts here for them to appreciate Chinese culture and Chinese literature texts that have been brought here to this International Book Fair of Havana. We're going to continue looking how Cubans come, enjoy themselves, and learn more about Chinese literature, learn more about the texts that have been brought over to Cuba as part of the International Book Fair. It's also an event that brings together lots of people. As you can see, we're walking through the fortress, the San Carlos de la Cabaña fortress, and it's an event that for 11 days will bring together hundreds of thousands of Cubans here in the capital. But the good thing that we can say is that the fair doesn't stay in Havana. Once it's over here at this San Carlos de la Cabaña fortress on February 11th, it will start heading towards the rest of the island in sections. First in the western part of Cuba, then in the central part of Cuba, and then it will end up on May 13th in the eastern part of Cuba in the city of Santiago de Cuba. It is the city where Fidel Castro, the former Cuban president and commander of the Cuban Revolution, is buried. Through the San Carlos de la Cabaña fortress, you can see Cubans have started to come in. It's just the beginning of the fair. As the days go on, more people will come in. Just at this site, last year, 416,000 people came. So we can imagine how big of an event for just 10 days for almost half a million people to come into a venue of this size to, have different approaches to literature, but also have a cultural and important gathering of Cubans for them to enjoy themselves, pretty much. This is a way that Cubans have to enjoy themselves. As we can see here to our left and to our right, these are different foreign and Cuban editorials. Here to our left, where the camera is right now taking a look at, we have different Cuban editorials publishing houses where people can also go into this small rooms or these rooms inside and have a look at the books that they're selling. And to our right, we have all the foreign publishing houses that are invited to the Cuban Book Fair this year. So we reiterate, it's a massive event. It's one of the most important book fairs in Latin America, and it's also the most prominent event for Cubans, culturally talking, to come here every year and spend the day, come and have a cultural gathering. So it's a good way for Cubans to get to know more about China, about its literature, but also about its traditions. If you like our report, please share it with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So with this tour that we've gone, with this live broadcast that we've done through the Cuban International Book Fair's 27th edition in 2018 here in Havana, we thank you for this live broadcast for Xinhua News Agency, and see you next time.